Friday, March 11th, as we are recording this week's episode. I'm Dan Watkins, joined as always by John McKechnie. John, we have made it to the glorious month of March, and I say glorious not just because, well, March Madness and all of that goodness, NFL free agency and all the chaos that is going on in the pro ranks of football, but spring practices are opening up, man, across the country. We already got some weird quotes from coaches going on. We're 5.5 months away from kickoff, but college football, the news cycle, it never sleeps.
It doesn't. I mean, we even had a little Lane Kiffin hanging out with Kirby Smart Instagram story. I think that was on Wednesday morning, and Kirby drinking.
Are you just following Kirby like at his every move? Because like you've opened up now back-to-back shows with who Kirby Smart is talking to and hanging out with. Is this what you do on your free time?
Well, all right. So you got me there, but. People on college football Twitter were also, tweeting about it. It just, Lane Kiffin's Instagram, I think, is really the flashpoint most of the time. Although the last Kirby Smart item was obviously something different. But a Southern coach drinking a beer. Who would have thought?
Who knows? Who would have thought? Absolutely. Look at us. There we go. Quick question though, off the top here, before we get into today's topics and this week's topics and all that. Month of March, best sports month of the year?
Yeah, it's hard to argue against it. I think October is right there too. But I think you have March Madness, you have baseball season starting, you have stuff like in this particular instance, you got the World Baseball Classic, you got college football spring practice getting started. You got NFL free agency. So, I mean, it just feels completely nonstop in a way that a few other months do. But October does have like the kind of complete sports equinox where everything is going on a given night in some instances. But the hope springs eternal element of March and just March Madness in general, I think probably pushes it over the edge just a touch.
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to push back too hard on you. I would give the slight edge to October just because everybody's actually playing games. Like you mentioned, the sports equinox where we have all 4 pro sports going on. We got college football season right in the meat of the schedule there in October. College basketball kind of starts to get going a little bit towards the end there too. Baseball playoffs is awesome. But, I mean, the madness, to steal a term there from March, I mean, just the pure chaos and craziness can definitely push to another level with the news cycle. I mean, everything that we got going on. I mean, last night, Tuesday, March 10th, and not to veer off on too many lanes.
Everything was happening.
What a wild night. Like, all over the place. I mean, you got the Max Crosby stuff in the NFL. You got college basketball conference tournament games going on and going nuts. You got Bam Adebayo dropping 83 points and crying after the game, which was a little weird. But, hey, I mean, he made like 33 free throws in that game to get to that 83 points. But still, I mean, Jaylen Brown of the Celtics getting tossed out of games, basically looking like he was about ready to like rip the ref's head off in that one. You got some crazy stuff in hockey too. Just a wild week we got going on.
And Team America kind of forgetting the rules of
that
the
too.
Tournament that they're
Mark
playing.
DeRosa. Oh my God.
So it's sort of like the scene in The Office, like the standoff of like these 3 giant storylines, like all competing, and like in 2 of the instances, I think for both the Ravens and Crosby, more on that in a second, or the Mark DeRosa stuff. It's like, come on, Bam Adebayo, like score more than Kobe. Like, please take a little bit of heat off of us, and like just rooting for the other story to take a little bit more oxygen, but. This is the internet. Everyone's very online, and everyone is getting their comeuppance and getting read the riot act for whichever misgivings. I mean, it's been, every time I've gone on Twitter this morning, which has been a lot. I've come out of it feeling very bad.
It's been an all-time like past 24 hours for Twitter. Like this was incredible. Absolutely incredible. All right, so bringing it back to college football, here's what we got for you guys on this week's show. We're going to spotlight 2 programs here. There's no like major news story and we're not going to do any rankings this week as of right now unless we come up with some off the top of our heads here. But let's talk about 2 programs that, well, half a decade ago were the gold standard. Were the poster boys of college football. And now both of them feel like they've taken, in one case, a gigantic step back. I don't know, maybe they fell down the stairs, the Clemson Tigers. And then Alabama, who's taken a step or two back since the Nick Saban days with Kalen DeBoer as he enters year 3. So we're going to talk about those two schools' spotlight as spring camp opens up for Clemson. They got on the practice field back in February. They might need it with how last season went. Alabama, they got their quarterback competition, which is a big storyline. We'll talk about that. The latest in the Trinidad Chambliss saga as the NCAA just won't let this die. We'll touch on that before the end of the show. College football playoff, I mean, it is bracket season with March Madness. College football playoff, they got to throw out a bracket of who the greatest champion in the 10, 11-year history of the college football playoff is. Talk about that, see if John's got any thoughts on that. I have a couple. And then we will wrap things up with just some takeaways from the NFL Combine and some maybe NFL draft thoughts if we have any. But anyways, let's get right to our lead topic today, and that's the Alabama Crimson Tide, right? Kalen DeBoer enters his 3rd season in Tuscaloosa. Bama went 11-4 last season. They lost the SEC championship game to Georgia. They go 1-1 in the college football playoff. They have that impressive win in Norman to knock off the Oklahoma Sooners in round 1, and then they just got, blasted by Indiana in the Rose Bowl. So Alabama heads into 2026. They bring in the number 6 recruiting class, the number 44 portal class. Kalen DeBoer, it kind of feels, John, like this is a little bit of a make or break year. I think it would have to go really off the rails for him to get fired, but he could very much be a guy going into 2027 that's not firmly on the hot seat if Alabama does not get back to the college football playoff this season. And clearly he wants to overhaul how things went up front for Alabama last year. He's brought in 6 guys in the portal on the offensive line. He fired their old offensive line coach, brings in Adrian Clem from the NFL ranks, who also spent some time in Oregon too a few years ago. But to give you guys just an idea, if you forgot how bad Alabama's offensive line was this past season in 2025, the Tide ranked 125th in rushing, averaging just over 104 yards per game. They were 111th in the nation in sacks allowed. Ty Simpson was one of the top 20 sacked quarterbacks in college football. So that naturally leads to Kalen DeBoer firing his offensive line coach, bringing in Adrian Clem. 4 of their 5 offensive line starters from 2025, John, are now gone. So a lot of new up front, and it feels like, they got to find this combination and make this thing work here, and they got to get it going quick.
Yeah, so who their neighbors were in the rushing rankings among Power 4 schools, down way at the bottom of the FBS, of course, like you were saying. Boston College, LSU, Oof. Minnesota, and Maryland. Can't be hanging out with those shady characters if you're Alabama.
No, you can't.
Those should not be your neighbors when it comes to how you performed running the football. And like you're saying, that was with, on paper, a really good offensive line. So switching out the coach, good. But having, next to no continuity and having a lot of, portal guys that you're expecting to take over and be starters next season, that can get a little bit tricky. Now, I do think something that should help this year, but it's also kind of a big test and it adds some gravity to the decision for Kalen DeBoer, is he kind of had a first 2-year roadmap, training wheels, I guess you could say. Inherits Jalen Milroe, and then Ty Simpson, sort of the heir apparent, the guy that Tide fans have been waiting on for a long time. Really only got 1 season out of him as the starter, but now it's on DeBoer to make his decision, whether it's Mac or Russell. I would go with Russell, but I tend to be the guy that is a little bit more gravitating towards the new flashy thing. I know that he has a longer history with Mac, but Keelan Russell was such a highly rated recruit a couple years ago. I think that he can be a big difference maker. I think that offense was humming a little bit better when it had a mobile quarterback element to it in a way that Ty Simpson wasn't providing last year. We're not enamored with this backfield depth chart as it is. It wasn't even for lack of recruiting. A.K. Deere was a guy that was a top 5, I think, running back prospect in last year's class. Just didn't do anything. Just did nothing. Right. And Daniel Hill, for as cool as he is, the concept of a 240-pound running back, yeah, that's awesome. But I don't think that you want to base your entire run game on a guy like that. I think you want a little bit more balance, a little bit more speed there. So That run game needs to get fixed, and I'm going to be fascinated to see if the quarterback can kind of be something that helps bridges the gap, because on paper right now I'm not really seeing it on that running back depth chart.
Yeah, so I guess let's talk about this quarterback battle. I think it's one of the more fascinating ones, if not like the number one like job battle in all of college football going into 2026. You got Austin Mack, who has literally been Kalen DeBoer's guy. He has followed him from Washington. DeBoer originally recruited him to Seattle. He follows him down to Alabama. He sits for a couple seasons there. Now it's like, okay, this is my time, right? So this is his fourth season in DeBoer's offense. He should know that system very well. Ryan Grubb is still there too. He's attempted 35 passes over the past 2 seasons. But on the other side, you got Keelan Russell, who was the number one dual threat quarterback in the class of 2025. He played well in some mop-up time in a couple of games as a freshman this past year. That's all according to ESPN, by the way. It's interesting. And you were kind of just hinting at it too, like, well, maybe if this offensive line isn't quite gelling yet at the end of summer and as we get into the month of September and those first couple of games here, maybe it will be better to have the number one dual threat quarterback from a couple cycles ago as your quarterback, just to buy you a little more time so you're not giving up all those sacks like you were a year ago.
And the sack issue, that would likely take care of it a little bit, and it just makes your offense look different. So I just feel like something needs to change with the shape of things, because the sort of just classic Ty Simpson drop back and pass it type of setup last year didn't end up paying dividends, even though they weren't running the ball with all that much regularity. Alabama was one of the teams that was passing it over 50% of the time last year. There's not a ton of teams that do that at the college level. I mean, they're throwing it at the same rate as like a Pitt or a Purdue, like teams in that ilk. Like that's what their sort of offensive philosophy was. So we were talking about it, and I know that like there's just sort of the general football intelligentsia. You need to throw the ball to win. But like we were all over it last year. It's like there's something wrong with Alabama's inability to run the football. And I mean, there are more things than just that got them into trouble against Indiana, of course. But in terms of like where they were over the course of the season, I think that their run game was holding them back, and we'll see if that gets fixed and what this quarterback decision, or how much that kind of plays into it.
Yeah, and through the first couple of practices, obviously no decision has been made. DeBoer kind of pumping the tires of both guys right now, which I expect him to do throughout the spring into summer. I don't think we get anything close to a decision until like mid-August.
Yeah,
if not like
they're going to wait as long as they possibly can.
Yeah, this will be your classic, like, I don't know, the Thursday leading into Labor Day weekend. Probably we find out, right? Like, or I mean, with how college football injury reports, I don't know, did they change this? Like, do you have to announce? Like, can't they take this like all the way until kickoff? Or like you used to be able to. Like this used to be a huge thing going into week one, where like coaches, if they did have that quarterback battle, right? Like they wouldn't say, and then it's just, okay, we're waiting to see who comes out with the first string in the first unit on the first drive of the season.
Yeah, I don't think they have to announce who's starting. I don't think they have to do that. They just have to announce if there's an injury, if a guy's going to be available or not. But we have seen in recent years, especially if a team, maybe this can help us transition into the schedule talk, where it's like you can kind of treat that first game, depending on who you're playing, like a fancy practice. You can treat it a little bit like a scrimmage. You can have both Russell and Mack go out there, and then whoever plays better gets a start against Kentucky in week 2. Like there is that level of luxury if the quarterback battle is as tight as we're expecting it to be, and the opening opponent, is probably going to be close to a 4-touchdown underdog. You got a lot of margin for error to play with, a lot of time to see what each of these guys have under game conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to the schedule in just a few minutes. There are a couple little other odds and ends that I do want to talk about. Ryan Williams, what happened? Like, what's going on there? Like, there is no way this kid peaked at 17 years old, right, in the month of October when he did that crazy spin in the air against Georgia a couple of years ago. Like, kind of disappeared last year. What's going on there? Because, well, for either one of these quarterbacks to have success, Like, they're going to need Ryan Williams to look more like that guy from 2024 and less like the guy from 2025.
Exactly, because Jeremy Bernard is gone now, so they kind of need a surefire.
And Horton transferred out too, right?
I believe so. So that kind of it's put up or shut up time for Ryan Williams, and he had one more catch last year than he did as a freshman, but for like 200 fewer yards and 4 fewer touchdowns. The yards per target figure wasn't as bad overall as maybe I remembered it being, but his catch rate was suspect. He didn't look like the same guy. Like that, it's very much like the numbers. If you just look at the numbers from last year, you wouldn't call it a catastrophe for Ryan Williams, but I think it's an eye test thing, and you look at how three of his 4 touchdowns last year were scored in the first 6 weeks of the season. His last touchdown was scored against LSU. There just weren't a lot of big games in there. Only one game over 100 yards. Again, that one against Wisconsin. But for the most part, we're seeing a guy that had way more games under 50 yards than above 50 yards, and going catchless against Auburn in that really tightly contested season finale, not really doing a ton against Oklahoma in the playoff either. It's like, what's going on? And he comes into this year, new name, and I think new number too. He's Ryan Coleman Williams now. So
okay,
he's trying to change the juju. He's trying to shake things up. I respect a man who's ready to shake things up if things are not working well. So I'm going to keep the faith on Ryan Williams. I think it is too early to jump ship on him, despite the sort of concerning sophomore slump that he had. But he's going to have to make it right because the spotlight is way more on him this time around with no Isaiah Horton, no Jeremy Bernard.
Yeah, absolutely. He's gone back to number 1, which he wore in high school. I'm reading when he dominated the high school ranks. So, hey, whatever you got to do to get out of your own head, which that could very much be what the issue with Ryan Williams is. Maybe he's just like in his own mind. But they got to get that guy back to the way he was, especially in the first half of the 2024 season. Because he did kind of trail off at the end of his freshman year too. And honestly, when you look at his numbers, it's been more than that stellar, like what we all remember from the first 6 weeks of the 2024 campaign. But Ryan Grubb has to unlock him without a doubt. Yeah,
there was a time, many moons ago where it's like Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, you could put them in the same sentence. You cannot,
right?
Obviously.
Who are you taking? 2027, who are you taking? Right? I remember that.
Yeah, it's obviously no longer any debate that any normal non-belligerent person is having, but we got to see when it comes to Williams. And I mentioned this guy a good bit during the season last year, but now he's going to have a much bigger opportunity. Latsier Brooks, keeping an eye on him as another huge factor in this Alabama passing game. He in kind of limited samples, I thought he looked really, really promising. He's obviously going to get a much bigger shot with all these targets opening up there in Tuscaloosa.
Absolutely. Then on the defensive side of the ball, quickly, Alabama returns their entire secondary. They're going to bring in some new pieces up front, but I do think this is going to be one of the better defenses in the SEC this season. There's a lot coming back there. If I'm an Alabama fan, I should feel pretty good about my defense, that it's going to give this offense and this offensive line time to figure things out.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is still... as much as people have wanted to kind of close the door on the Saban era and that this is no longer the same Alabama team. I know the results haven't quite been there these first 2 years under DeBoer, but on just a pure talent ratio for the entirety of this roster, it's still top 5. This is still absolutely one of the most talented rosters that you're going to have in college football. Now, is it number 1 with a bullet the way it used to be under Saban? No, but it is still right there, and with the way that talent has spread out and flattened out across the college football landscape, having a top 5 talent ratio pretty important. So if the pieces all fit, work together, this could the tide could be back right at another 10, 11 win type of season.
Absolutely. So that takes us right into their schedule. And let's take a look at this. What are the expectations for Alabama this season, John? As you mentioned, kind of a soft opening here. You get East Carolina at home, at Kentucky, And then they'll be ready to go against Florida State this time around with
Yeah.
this game in Tuscaloosa. That's for sure. And you get South Carolina and then at Mississippi State, all leading up to the Georgia game, which is also at Alabama this season. So really nice ramp up for the Tide. They should be undefeated going into that Georgia game. Like, if I'm an Alabama fan, my expectations, looking at this schedule, right, baseline is 10-2 and in the playoff again, right where we were a year ago. Anything less, I'm pissed. I probably have the pitchforks out, and I'm going after DeBoer. But just looking at this schedule, right, no Ole Miss on this year. You get Georgia and A&M both at home. You got some tough road games against LSU. Vanderbilt could be sneaky tough, but no Texas, no Oklahoma, no Ole Miss. And then you got to figure a way. You got to split or go 2-0 in those home games between Georgia and Texas A&M. And then you got to figure out a way to go get at least one win out of that Tennessee, LSU, Vanderbilt stretch there too.
Exactly. So they get that kind of luxury of the first 5 or so games of the season are all very winnable, and then it's a bit of a gauntlet for them. Like you were saying, you got Georgia on October 10th, then Tennessee, then A&M, then a bye, and then going to Baton Rouge. So that 4-game stretch in a 5-week period, I think, is going to tell us a lot about who the Tide are this year. But I think in their case, this is a year where, sometimes you want to just come right out and like have like that tough opening game or maybe get a couple challenges that opening month of the season. I think Alabama, with the way that their quarterback situation is set up right now, they'd prefer to kind of work out the kinks in season before they get into that gauntlet, assuming they get things ready to go by that time. They own Georgia during the regular season at the very least. Tennessee, they've lost the last 2, I think, in Knoxville, so that's something to keep an eye on. I do think that I'll be kind of like selling my A&M stock a little bit this year. And then who knows when it comes to LSU. You could see them being a title contender. You could also see them having some trademark Lane Kiffin, how they lose that game type of stuff to them. But overall, 10 wins, it has to be your baseline expectation for Alabama. Anything less than that is probably going to get you left out of the playoffs. And again, we enter another season where DeBoer is not the most liked man in Tuscaloosa. So
let's say they finish 10-2, right? And they get into the playoff, but then it's another kind of quickish exit. Does that satisfy this fan base? Are Alabama fans, will they be satisfied? I mean, probably not, right? But realistically, Alabama fans, I want to know and I want to hear from you. If you're 10-2 again, you go 1-1 in the playoffs, you get bounced in the quarterfinals. How are you feeling?
I mean, there's just kind of an existential crisis that this is you now. That you can make it to the second round of the playoff, but there's nothing about you that necessarily screams yeah, this team's going to win the national championship game every single year. And I'm sure that's a tough mindset to shake when that was how you lived your life for about 15 years there as an Alabama fan. But I think ultimately, if you just had to be purely realistic with yourself as an Alabama fan, a season like last year, done again this year, would be at least you can't be shaking your fist at something like that. Now, falling short of the playoff, then it's a different discussion. But 10-2, making the playoff, winning a game in the playoff, especially a road game like they did last year, I'd say sign me up for that if I'm an Alabama fan right now.
Yeah, I think 99% of schools in the country should sign up for that, and I think Alabama's one of them. Just looking at some of the comments, I posted Alabama's schedule on our TikTok page at College Football Tailgate. Some of the comments, a lot of 10-2, 11-1 in those comments there, so seems to be pretty rational. But if you're maybe feeling a little irrational and you think that, yes, this team is a national title contender, John, could I interest you in Alabama future at 25-1? They have the 11th best odds on DraftKings right now to win the national championship.
I don't think that those are long enough for me. I don't know if this Alabama team has it in them. I think I would need something closer to 40-1 to really be interested. So I understand it if you're on the other side of me on this one, but too much uncertainty whether it's the tough part of that schedule or are they going to get the quarterback decision correct? Are they going to be able to run the football? Is the offensive line going to hold up? Too many big question marks for me to be taking at that particular number of 25-1.
Yeah, the uncertainty at the quarterback position, I'm staying away from Alabama right now. They won't be in my portfolio, if you will, as some in the betting space like to call it. But anyways, definitely going to be an interesting season down there in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure we'll be talking about them quite a bit as we lead up to kickoff over the next 5.5 months. But anyways, guys, thank you very much. If you are watching and been following along, hit that subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube. We just went over 100 subs last week, so we are growing this as we head into our second season here. Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. It doesn't cost you anything. Just helps John and I as we continue to try to grow this thing. We are College Football Tailgate. You can find us at that handle on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. I mentioned our TikTok page, which is always a lot of fun, at CFB Tailgate. It's a great time in the comments section. Go check that out. And CFB Tailgate 25 on Twitter as well. All right, so moving on. We just talked about Alabama. We got to talk about another program that is looking to return to past glory and has made some big-time changes on the coaching staff, and that's the Clemson Tigers. And, John, Clemson opened up camp in February this year, which I think is probably a good thing for them. I think Clemson, after the way 2025 went, they finished 7-6, the most losses that they've had in a season since 2010, right? They entered last season as the fourth-ranked team in the country. Some people thought they were going to win the national title.
Yeah,
I don't know who those...
Talking about portfolio, man. Yikes.
Yeah, talk about lighting your filing cabinet on fire with that portfolio, but and just starting from scratch. Horrible year for Clemson last season. They come into 2026 with the 17th ranked recruiting class, the 31st ranked portal. They went into the portal. They brought in 9 guys, according to On3. Dabo maybe getting with the times a little bit. So it's going to be interesting there in Clemson, South Carolina. But I got to point this out right off the bat because, I love a good team slogan. What I don't love is some weird-ass acronym with an exponent in it, and that is what Clemson has drawn up for this season. So I'm just going to share this with you guys because Chapel Fowler over at 24/7 Sports, who is a great follow for all things Clemson, tweeted this out back at the start of camp, right? On the big screen. At the Clemson football spring practice fields today, take Clemson back to the top, a.k.a. TCBT cubed. Really rolls off the tongue, John.
Yeah, I mean, you could envision the advertising board meeting where that came up and people were just like high-fiving each other and freaking out, throwing things. Like, this is the greatest slogan of all time. Who could forget TCBT square or cubed? Sorry. Yeah, no, that's so good, dude. That's I expect nothing less from Dabo Swinney in the year 2026 than to drop something like that. I guess they need some sort of rallying cry. That's a hilarious one. That's such a beautiful snapshot of Clemson football. Just like you're trying to do it. You're trying to hang on, but you're missing the mark in a pretty significant way. So yeah, that sounds. It sounds like Clemson in 2026 is take Clemson back to the top, cubed. Great.
TCBT cubed is giving me PTSD Folks. From PEMDAS and all that from high school as I'm trying to wait the exponent and oh my god, okay, cubed, right? There we go. But anyways, yeah, Dabo had to have signed off on that. There is no way any coach is letting anything be displayed on his practice field without giving that the okay. So on one hand, you got Dabo, right? He's starting to go into the portal, brings in 9 guys, top 35 portal class, according to On3. And on the other, he's just throwing out weird-ass slogans for his players to look at, which is just, well, it's very strange. But anyways, actually what's going on here at Clemson. So Garrett Riley fired as the offensive coordinator after just a terrible, terrible season on offense where they just couldn't get anything going, especially on the ground game. He brings in Chad Morris, who returns to Clemson. This is the 3rd time that Dabo has hired Chad Morris. The 2nd time as offensive coordinator. He was the OC from 2011 to 2014. He hasn't called plays, John, since 2020. So that's going to be interesting there on offense. You got a quarterback battle going on there. Cade Klubnik is gone. Chris Johnson Jr., we're getting old. CJ2K Jr. is transferred into Clemson after a year at SMU. They are very high on him. Just go look at him, search Chris Johnson Jr. on Twitter, and you're going to see a bunch of quotes that these coaches are just – they are loving themselves right now that they got this guy to work with, which it sounds like they should. It sounds like he's just as fast as his old man. His old man, who's probably 35, 36. But anyways, going to be interesting on offense. Tom Allen returns on defense for his second season. He's hired his son. He's going to be a high-level assistant now, too. That always just makes me scratch my head. Rick Bisaccia has come in from the NFL. Remember him? He was the interim coach of the Raiders a few years ago. He is now the special teams coordinator at Clemson. But it feels like a lot of moving parts here where Clemson's trying to adapt and change. It's just, is this all going to work?
Yeah, color me skeptical. Vizina has been there for a really long time. So I think that he will at least be giving them competent quarterback play. Klubnik wasn't exactly great last year either. I do feel like the receiving core is a strength of this team as well. I'm a huge Bryant Wesco guy, but I feel like the talent level that they have is something that I'm getting a little bit concerned about. Like, they didn't sign a single 5-star this past cycle, and in terms of 5-stars that they had on their roster last year, it looks like almost all of them are gone to the NFL, whether it was Klubnik, I think Sammy Brand's still there, but Tristan Lee, Jeremiah Alexander,
the whole D-line's gone.
Peter Woods,
pretty much.
Yeah. So I mean, that's.
I was going to say, is Wesco the only 5-star guy left?
Him and TJ Moore, I think.
So the wide receiver room.
Yeah. So that's where your talent is, and TJ Parker way up there as well, a high 4-star. But. Yeah, I mean, I don't really know, man. It doesn't feel like this is a great setup for Clemson. Now, they are in the ACC, so that that kind of gives them a softer cushion. But I think we're out of giving them the benefit of the doubt, where if we were looking at Clemson going into this past season, you're assuming that they're going to be favored in probably every game that they were playing last year, especially getting that LSU team at home in their opener. I don't think that they're going to be favored in every game, and I think that there's ways in which these kind of mid-tier, middle-class ACC teams, I wouldn't be scared of Clemson if I were them.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all. I mean, Clemson, right? They are have become the epitome of we used to have nice things, right? We used to be a proper country.
Yeah.
That is what Clemson is now, and you brought up The Office at the very beginning of our podcast here. The thing that last night as I was doing my research for Clemson and prepping, all I could think of was Andy Bernard with the good old days quote, right?
Sure.
I wish there was a way that we knew we were in the good old days before we left them. That's how Clemson fans got to be feeling right now, because it is just I talked about falling down the stairs. That's kind of how it feels like with this Clemson program. So Bill Connolly over at ESPN has ranked every single quarterback room going into spring camps here for 2026. And I just want to read you a little bit about what he wrote about the Clemson quarterback room. And Christopher Vizina, who is a redshirt junior, he has spent 3 seasons at the school already. Connolly ranks them as the 52nd best quarterback situation heading into spring camp, right? Quote, Vizina was decent in his only career start. He threw for 317 yards and 3 touchdowns, albeit at just 6.4 yards per dropback in a 35-24 loss to SMU. And having wide receivers TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco at his disposal will help. But after only one top 40 finish in offensive SP plus in the past 5 seasons, the Clemson offense no longer gets the benefit of the doubt, and that doesn't change with new/old offensive coordinator Chad Morris taking over, who hasn't overseen a good college offense since 2017. And there's some stuff about Chad Morris that's being written right now, and how he drinks a bunch of Red Bull and stays late and all that kind of that's what you're supposed to do if you are a college football coach, especially at a program like Clemson. You should be burning both ends. Right, of the candle
Yeah,
in,
Red
in there
Bull
all night.
is your water. Like that.
Yeah.
That's baseline. That's basic survival to me. Show me the C4 consumption. Show me the rain energy.
Shout out Mike
drinks.
Vrabel. Shout out Mike Vrabel. Like with his C4. That was a fun story. I enjoyed that much more than Chad Morris and his Red Bull and bubblegum story that's going on
It's
right now.
energy drinks for babies.
Come on. Anyways, so as I mentioned, the Clemson defensive line, right? That's a question mark. And like, if there's been one thing about Clemson, like during this weird period that they've been in the past few years, John, it's been that the defensive line's been solid, right? They have always just had studs up front, and that's kept them in games, and they can generate pressure with four guys. Well, now there's a lot of unknown there. With you got a couple of freshmen fighting for starting jobs. You got some red-shirted players in there, some portal guys too. That is where Dabo actually kind of went ham in the portal, is on the defensive line. Now, I will say this. If there's one thing I am still confident in when it comes to Clemson football, it's that they'll figure out their defensive front seven.
Yeah. That's something that they've unlocked the ancient art of doing that year over year. They've got that, but it also seems to like come at this weird cost where their offensive line always stinks. It's always like unathletic, soft guys. I don't know if that's going to be any different this year, and that therein lies like one of the many things that could be a limiting factor, I think, for this Clemson team. So whereas we do have that innate trust of that defensive front being pretty much up to snuff, you could argue is a little bit disappointing relative to expectations this past year. I think that offensive line is probably going to be a bigger combination of unathletic, soft guys that aren't getting it done.
So, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, lucky for Clemson, they do play in the ACC, right? The schedule, it's going to be workable. They're going to be able to figure things out. But on the other hand, we were talking about soft openings and ramp-ups when it came to Alabama, like 10, 15 minutes ago. Not the case with the Clemson Tigers. They have quite possibly the worst spot in all of college football to open up the season. Week 1 kickoff in Baton Rouge. Lane Kiffin's first game as the head coach as the LSU Tigers. FanDuel's already got a lineup for this one, John. LSU's favored by 11.5 week 1 over Clemson. So let's take a look at this schedule here and see what the expectations should be for the Clemson Tigers. Right, you got at LSU, but then you get a couple home games with Georgia Southern and North Carolina. You got your cross-country trip on a short week, a Friday night at Cal. That could be a very interesting spot there. But then you come back home, and you're basically home for the entire month of October. You get Miami at home. You get Georgia Tech at home. South Carolina's at home this year. Virginia Tech with James Franklin as the head coach. That game's at home too. All things considered, if Clemson's not back to 9-3 this season, I think that's another disaster.
Yes, it would be. I think, not just missing the playoff, but like missing bad. Like going 8-4, something like that. Yeah, I think that they would have to start thinking about how to make that move on from him. I know that like a lot of the fans seem to just kind of be out on him at this point, and they're ready for something new and understand that like there's just going to be. It's tough to transition off of a guy that is the sort of unfireable legend that Dabo Swinney is, but also like still isn't reading the writing on the wall that he's not the guy to continue pushing Clemson up to the top. So it's a thorny issue for folks there. I don't know what the best way of the escape route is for them, but I just envision another, maybe not as big of a disaster last year, especially relative to expectations. The heat's off of them a little bit coming into this year, but man, like I'm not really seeing like much beyond like 9-3 as like a best case scenario here.
I'd almost make the argument that like 9-3 is worst case scenario for them, in the way that 9-3 gives Dabo that like we'll see, right? Like, well, or how much better are you going to do? Look what I just did, right? I brought in a handful of guys from the portal, right? Yeah. Like I where. If you're a Clemson fan and you want to get rid of them, I think you want another 6-6, 7-5 season. As messed up as that sounds, right?
Taking
because if not, like 8-4, 9-3, right? And let's say those losses are at LSU and against Miami, who let's say they make another deep run, and maybe you get popped by a short week on the road across the country at Cal, right? And those are 3 of your losses. Then you got one other slip up in there, and Clemson's still somewhat in the picture for the ACC title game race. Like that just like gives like, well, Dabo's still got you right there. He just needs a little boost to get you over the hump. And how are you going to tell Dabo Swinney that he needs a little bit of like a kick in the ass to get back to that? Like, so it's a weird situation, but yeah, I got this team right now pegged at like 9-3.
And yeah, no, that I love that call where 9-3 is actually a brutal spot. You either want to take your medicine or you want to be back to, where you expected to be after, how things went in the middle part of last decade, and how things on balance, how good they've been under Dabo Swinney, where it's like, you expect to win the ACC, you expect to be in the playoff every single year, you expect to be competing for national championships. We're not there right now. We'll see if there's still kind of like a second stanza to Dabo Swinney's career there at Clemson. I'm not so sure, so I'm gonna remain relatively cool on them. I'll go one worse than you. I'll say they're 8-4.
Yeah, so if you don't want to give them the benefit of the doubt, like you have all the reason in the world to feel that way. Clemson's just 26-14 in the last 3 seasons. They're just 15-9 in ACC games, right? With the one conference championship. It's like, is this what they are now? Like on a random year, like, okay, like in a 3-year cycle, right? Like 1 year you'll have a really good year, but then those other 2, you're back in the middle of the pack. It's just, you're just waiting to see if this is one of those years where you pop, where Clemson's not that dominant team anymore, where they are consistently in the ACC title game. It's a really weird, is this what we are now kind of team.
I mean, going from like 2015 to 2020, did they have 9 losses, period, let alone like conference losses? Like,
right?
Man, things got different.
They won what, 7 straight ACC titles?
Yeah, they just
or something
owned
like
it.
that. Yeah.
So it's different times now, and that happened. The sands shifted quickly there, no question.
Yeah, no, for betting purposes, you had to really scroll down on the futures tab on DraftKings or FanDuel to find Clemson. 80-1, John, for Clemson to win the national title. And I feel like that's being generous. Like, I feel like this should be like in like the 100-1 range.
Maybe Indiana was 80-1 this past year. I'm not sure that Clemson's got the same cachet right now than Indiana did going into last year. So I'm going to leave that alone. I will hunt for some ticket to light my money on fire at 80-1 or longer, just because that feels like it's possible now every single year. But it's not going to be on Clemson. I'll tell you that much.
Let me just quickly look and see who is in that same ballpark here.
Yeah, give me some.
Minnesota.
Oh.
Maryland. Am I just reading your list of rushing from a year ago? So let's see. Minnesota, Maryland, West Virginia, Washington State, Hawaii, shout out Tommy Chang, East Carolina, Syracuse, Rutgers, and Northwestern are all in the same boat there as where you would find Clemson. And I'm just looking. I think these odds have changed since I looked last night. Something must have happened. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's the 800-1, not the 80-1.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. So Clemson actually is up towards like the top 25 here, but you got BYU at plus 7,000, Mizzou at 90-1, SMU 100-1, Washington's right in there, Iowa behind them, Tennessee is plus 6,500, Florida at plus 6,000, Auburn 6,500. Out of any of those schools, BYU would be the only one I'd be interested in. So there you go, Cougars fans. There's something nice for you.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. Yeah, BYU stands out, and then I'd probably say Florida or Tennessee have a better shot at doing it this year than Clemson does too.
Yeah. All right. Well, anyways, I'm sure there will be plenty to talk about with Clemson and their slogan and their exponents and all that kind of stuff moving forward. All right, a couple things here before we sign off for this week. The Trinidad Chambliss saga. Well, the NCAA, as we figured, they would not just take their ball and go home. They are appealing. Chambliss's appeal or whatever it was at this point, as this thing is just giving me a total headache at this point.
Yep.
But basically the NCAA is arguing that they should be the ones who are allowed to interpret their rules. Like, they are the ones who should have the final say, not some judge in Mississippi. And, like, they are bringing up some high school case from 2011 in the state of Mississippi to try to pull this off. Like, just stand down, NCAA. Like, we talk about this all the time. You guys need the victories where you can get them. Like, this is not the hill to die on.
No, we're too far along in this. Like, it'd be damaging. I think everyone again is pretty much good with Chambliss playing one more year. NCAA just really doesn't have much in the way of legs to stand on at this point.
Over a medical waiver yeah. That was filed or wasn't filed, or whatever it was at this point. It's so stupid. Just leave it alone.
Yeah. Ferris State wasn't like completely like up to speed on stuff. Like what a stunning development. I don't know. Take it up with Ferris State or something, but I think we got to let Chambliss play at Ole Miss this year, and I don't feel like this needs to get drugged down further in the mud if you're the NCAA.
So, anyways, we will be following that, as that is still one of the bigger storylines of the offseason with Trinidad Chambliss. Hopefully, the NCAA just gets kind of squashed here in the next couple of weeks, and we can forget about it as we head into the 2026 season. All right, NFL Combine, John, we haven't talked since the Combine happened. Nothing really all that crazy, but there are a few things just on like when it comes to like the betting odds of the NFL draft that I do find interesting. One is, are we certain that Arvell Reese is going to be the second guy off the board? Like, should he be minus 200 at this point? Like, did he really show out that much? I find that interesting that he's separating himself from David Bailey. I'd sprinkle on David Bailey there, just because you're getting a nice number at like 2-1, where the Jets could very well be enamored with him and want to take him at number 2.
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of good reason to believe it in Bailey as the second pick in that market, and I don't think that Reese. I mean, Reese, you can obviously see the projectable talent.
And it's not a knock on him. I'm not trying to like knock him either. I guess it's more from just a value standpoint that these guys are so comparable and kind of a coin flip, and you're giving me one of them to me at 2-1 or better.
He feels a little bit more of like a project, which I mean, I'm sure that like the Jets, like they're good with taking that on because they don't need like a right away type of guy, and he's going to play right away regardless. But like Reese, I think needs to bulk up a little bit. The arms were shorter than I thought. I thought he kind of like watching him at Ohio State. He reminded me of like, you know, the movie The Predator. Like the way that he moved, like just huge athlete, but maybe not quite as maybe the scarlet and gray was kind of like helping his case there a little bit. So I think David Bailey is probably a little bit more of like conventional guy, but that can help you right away. Reese going to take a little bit more time, and then Sonny Styles, I don't know if he's going to go second overall. I think that the position that he plays it's going to make that difficult, even for the Jets. But man, that you talk about like a guy who like was just doing freak stuff at the combine. Sonny Styles is something else.
Yeah, him and Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon, who was just an absolute unicorn. And whatever team gets him is getting a total weapon that I think will probably be getting quite a few Rookie of the Year tickets on him at a nice number just because he plays tight end. Another thing that kind of jumped out to me, Carnell Tate, I mean, I guess he runs a little slower than we were expecting by like 0.05 of a second. But are we sure that he's going to be the first wide receiver taken? Like, I think Mekhi Lemon is starting to win some people over too.
Right, and yeah, like him and Tyson like didn't even test, and Carnell Tate like gets punished for competing, even though he only did the 40. But I did some digging into this, and the top like 10 guys who have run the 40 the last few years versus like the top 10 in fantasy producers, like really only Jamar Chase tested as like a great athlete. Like the rest of those guys like are just technicians, like JSN, like Puka Nakua, all this and that. Like that, those weren't guys that even at their pro day times, like friendlier tracks, friendlier everything, didn't really like have like that 99th percentile spark score. Like really only Jamar Chase at his pro day. Other than that, like you get guys like, I don't know, Tyquan Thornton or Xavier Worthy or stuff like that. That's just like, okay, the 40's nice. Is it useful? No? Okay.
Can you catch?
Yeah.
Do you have hands? Do you have hands?
In their case, no. Like Tyquan Thornton, I think has like the smallest hands of like any receiver in the NFL right now. Actually,
he just got paid this week. He just got a 2-year contract from the Chiefs. Another failed Patriots wide receiver draft pick, one of many over the years. But those are just a couple of the things that are interesting me right now. What about you? I saw you threw something on our notes here.
Yeah, I still don't know who the second running back in this class is, and I'm still kind of lightly inclined to say it's your guy Jadarian Price because I thought
that's what I think.
The film, the production, the last couple of years, like he looks like he can be the guy. He didn't test as well as I was expecting. But it wasn't like a disaster by any means. He just didn't completely crush it. And, this running back class, like no one else really competed for the most part. Like if, Mike Washington might have made himself some money, being a guy that was maybe on the fringe of being drafted or not. Now he's definitely going to be drafted after what he did with what he weighed in at. But, this isn't a class that I think was really reshaped in a major way from the combine. So I still think that Price is a guy that, maybe isn't in that early day 2 discussion anymore, but I still think that he's the second running back off the board, probably sometime in the later part of the second round.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense there. Definitely something to watch. Pro days coming up here over the next month or so. We'll be talking about those. Getting really more into this NFL draft stuff too as the weeks go on and we get closer. But anyways, I think that's going to do it for us this week. I don't have anything else left to talk about here for this week anyway.
Some ground was covered for sure.
Yeah,
a lot of bagging on
definitely.
Clemson and Alabama, so I had a great time.
Absolutely. I mean, how could you not enjoy that? But anyways, thank you very much, guys. Hit that subscribe button, College Football Tailgate, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. We'll be back next week with another show. And if there's a specific team that you do want us to talk about or spotlight, shout it out. Leave it in the comments. Yeah. So, because we're always wondering who to talk about. I think we're both just kind of like mentally playing this like game of chicken of like, I'm trying to avoid bringing up Notre Dame as soon as possible. You're trying to avoid bringing up Georgia as soon as possible. But I did see a stat, and this is what I'll leave you with. 3 teams, I believe, or maybe that are favored in every game this year. And 2 of them are Notre Dame and Georgia.
Okay.
Are expected to be favored because the lines aren't fully out yet. But those are the 2 that are expected to be favored in every game this season.
Who'd the third be? Ohio State?
No, I think I saw it was no, because they go to Texas. No, I think it might have been like North Dakota State in their first year, which is wild in the Mountain West. But anyways, that's going to do it for us. We'll talk about that at another time. Talk to you guys next week.